Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are going to go ahead and get started here. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Wing T. I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Molly, she, her as well, and we are part of the MPD150 core, and we're excited to be here with you tonight.
Before we hand it over to our moderator for this panel, MPD150's core group wanted to share a few quick words. First of all, thank you to our panelists and our moderator, and to everyone for being here this evening and or watching this online later. Thank you for being here, but also thank you for all of your work. That includes our special guests, O. Smith, Dr. Rose Brewer, Taiwana Shambley, and Jason Soul, but also so many of you in this virtual space here with us tonight. MPD 150 was never the driver of abolitionist organizing in Minneapolis. Our role was much more specifically about narrative. From organizers with Black visions, Reclaim the Block, Rep for Minnesota, and others, as well as the more informal projects and initiatives that have popped up over the last few years, not to mention the everyday practices being developed by community members all over Minneapolis and beyond. Thank you all for showing that abolition isn't a far-off utopian vision. Bits and pieces of it are already here, and they're growing. Because this is our sunsetting event, a few people have been curious about what that means. The short version is this. MPD 150 came together to mark the 150th anniversary of the founding of the Minneapolis Police Department in 2017. After the 4th Precinct occupation following the murder of Jamar Clark, after organizing in the name of Fong Lee, Terrence Franklin, Philando Castile, the list of names could go on. More and more people were noticing this cycle. Police violence leads to protest, leads to demands for reform, leads to reform either being enacted but ineffective, enacted in a watered down version, or not enacted at all, leads to nothing actually changing, leads to more police violence. Of course, that cycle isn't new. And abolition as a potential break from that cycle isn't new. But partly because of social media, partly because of specific voices calling attention to it, partly because of the broader Black Lives Matter movement, abolitionist ideas were gaining traction. So, as MPD 150 began to form, through discussions and idea generation, a collective of artists, activists, researchers, and other community members decided to produce a report, a 150-year performance review and a people's history of MPD, one that would look back at our history as well as forward into abolitionist possibilities. This became the MPD 150 report, Enough is Enough, and it is available now for free in both physical and digital versions.
And so we as MPD150 stuck around after the publication of that report with an art exhibit at New Rules called Making It Real, because that's what it's all about, the publication of a comic book called Community Policing and Other Fairy Tales, because that's what they are, the construction of a multi-channel online presence sharing resources, information, and stories from abolitionist organizers all over the country, multiple visits to schools, conferences, events, and other spaces to facilitate conversations about abolition. We also did the publication of zines, toolkits, and other resources, including the most recent project involving lupine seeds, which we will talk about more later. It's certainly been a busy 5 years, and there's been a lot going on for all of you and all of us. And as Ricardo Levins Morales recently wrote, our intention was to create conditions for new organizing initiatives, not to become a permanent organization ourselves. The original plan had been to sunset during the spring of 2020. We were working on what was supposed to be a final project, an expanded or 2.0 edition of the Enough is Enough report, featuring new writing, artwork, discussion questions, and more. But we delayed plans for our early April event when it became clear the pandemic was another real thing we would all face. Then, after the uprising in the wake of the police murder of George Floyd, it became necessary for us to delay that sunsetting a bit more. We ended up printing 25,000 copies of the expanded edition of the report and spent the last 2 years getting them into as many hands as possible to keep this story, a different story about what actually keeps our communities safe and healthy, about prevention instead of punishment, about the power that people have to imagine and to build a more life-affirming, just world without prisons and police, to keep that story fresh in people's heads so that other organizations and efforts could plant their seeds in as fertile a soil as possible. And of course, that work goes on, just not through the container known as MPD 150. Our work has never been about centering ourselves, rather working to lift up the work of generations and what we all know to be true. We are sunsetting, going to let the moon do what it's going to do, hopefully more dreaming and dreaming into action, knowing that the sun of liberation is perpetually rising, that just as we were one stage of this work, there are and there will be new stages from all of you, from young people, and informed by those who carry the story and the history of this work. Tonight, our panelists join us from different organizations, spaces, and roles in the movement for this conversation on the past, present, and future of abolition in Minneapolis. And now I want to introduce our panel moderator, O, who has thoughtful questions for the panelists this evening. We also plan to have a brief amount of time for attendee questions near the end. So if you want to submit a question for the panel, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So our dear moderator, O, was involved in MPD 150 during our initial work and really holds a place in the heart of MPD 150 and in our hearts. O continues to do their work towards liberation, has worked with the Freedom Fund. O lifts up that they envision a world where communities, especially those Black, under-resourced, marginalized, and historically oppressed communities, are autonomous in shaping their lives and delivering equitable policies for all. They believe deeply that in order to make space for such a world, old systems rooted in capitalism, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and cultural genocide need to be abolished. They come to their current position at Nexus Community Partners, rooted in serving communities in various forms, and have had a nuanced lens around criminal justice and the intersections of race, gender, sexuality, and socioeconomic status. And with that, thank you all again for being here, and we'll turn it over to you, O.
Thank you. I am so honored and so humbled to be the moderator for this evening. It is just such a bittersweet moment to help provide a homegoing for the organization or for the project. MPD 150 was one of my first organizing spaces within the Twin Cities. As someone who was freshly touching down in 2016 from the Bronx, I was mighty with the mouth. And came to Minnesota with my own truths to share. And there were so many people within the core team who provided the soil and nutrients to not only help build out my organizing spirit, but provided me with a deep education around the necessity of leading with humanity. There's a section that is in the report that reads that our connection, our love, our determination, and our solidarity are also our truths, are necessary and they light our path ahead. So I just want to take a moment of deep gratitude to shout out Molly, Tia, Ricardo, Wing T, Kyle, Tori, Peter, Tony. I feel like I'm at the Oscars. I'm like, this is my moment. Paige, Layla, Jaehoon, Martin, and Sheila, like, y'all just hold so much love in my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, y'all. So we are here today, dearly beloveds, we are gathered here today to be in conversation about the past, present, and future of abolition here in the Twin Cities and beyond. And before I introduce our amazing panelists, I just want to say a few words about the convergence of the past, the present, and the future. In 2016, I met a group of activists, artists, and organizers, and so much more on the couches of VRJ, because at the time in Minneapolis, we'd be coming up on 150 years of police violence, and a people's examination was due. Today, we're about 150 years of police oppression and occupation. And we know that the message behind the report is ever significant and has continued a rich legacy of documenting the importance of police-free futures. And I just want to take a moment to note and talk about the future. When I was chatting with Molly, Wing T, and Tia Ricardo about just the run of the show tonight, something that Molly had mentioned really grabbed my soul. And it was about, she had paraphrased the quote that abolition is about presence, not absence, which is a Ruth Wilson Gilman quote. And it grabbed me because in these near and far out futures, we are limitless and we get to be limitless. And it's just a nice reminder of today as we're sitting on the first snow, right? That those futures start with the seeds we planted, and we planted so many seeds over the course of the last 5 years. And we are going to continue to plant seeds, without MPD 150 being here, but also in the presence of what we build out from this day forward. So, and with that said, I just want to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Rose M. Brewer, who is thank you, Rose, the Morris Alumni Distinguished Teaching Professor and past chairperson of the Department of American and Africana Studies at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. She is an affiliate faculty member in the Department of Sociology, Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies, and activist scholar. Professor Brewer publishes extensively on Black radical feminism, political economy, social movements, race, class, gender, and social change. She was a founding board member of Project South, Institute of the Elimination of Poverty and Genocide, a past board member of the United for Fair Economy, and a founding member of Black Radical Progress. She is currently a member of Black Vision's Policy Board as the court organizer of the 2007, 2010, and 2015 U.S. Social Forums. The struggle for social transformation for her is centered in the local and global for people and the planet. So in your own words, Rose, abolition is?
First, let me say it's so good to be here this evening with such an amazing group of people who've done such incredible work. I don't really know how to feel about a homecoming and a homegoing and an homage making, given what has transpired because of the work of MPD 150. The only thing I can say is thank you.
Thank you.
So what is abolition to me?
Yes.
Abolition is a process, a vision, the politics of social transformation. Abolition is healthcare that is not in tatters because of the drive for profits, a public health system able to meet the exigencies of COVID-19 with no million+ deaths in the US, heavily Black, Brown, and Indigenous. Abolition is the end to a ravaging capitalist economy rooted in exploitation and expropriation, in which at least 50 million people in the US and billions globally are underemployed, unemployed, facing the prospect of long-term joblessness, homelessness, hunger, deep austerity, and dispossession. Abolition is no more police, no more militarized police forces that look away from right-wing white supremacists perpetrating violence, while without a blink of an eye kill Black bodies, and are those self-same supremacists deploying the power of the state in their violence to protect the capitalist state. Abolition is a transformed world and society made manifest in our collective struggles, work, and responsibility, creating shared power with shared resources, belonging to those who produce those resources, living as people and planet sustainably and in peace. It means, as Ruth Gilmore has powerfully said, to change everything. That's abolition to me.
Akshe, Akshe, Akshe. I feel like that was an incantation. Thank you. All right, next up is Taiwana Shambley. Taiwana, she, her, is a freelance fiction writer, teacher, teaching artist, spoken word artist, abolition organizer from St. Paul, living in South Minneapolis. Hey. Serving as lead organizer and creator of the Youth Prison Abolition Campaign in Youth Prisons, Minnesota from 2021 to 2022. At the Legal Rights Center, she works to imagine and practice liberation for BIPOC youth in Minnesota, with special focus on queer and transness, disability, and incarceration. Her fiction has been recognized by grants from Cura and IMRAC, and she has prose poems published by the Academy of American Poets and Belt Publishing. Currently pursuing a Master's of Fine Arts in Fiction from Warren Wilson College, Taiwana is a 2021 graduate of Oxford University in English and African American Studies. You can find Taiwana's writing and learn more about her, how to support her work at TaiwanaShambly.com. And if we could have somebody just like copy that, TaiwanaShambly.com, and put that in the chat. Hey.
All right.
In your own words, abolition is welcome, welcome.
Yes. Thank you. I'm super humbled to be sharing space with everybody. I'm like looking through the participants list and I'm like, oh, I know them. And I'm like, oh, I don't know them. Thank you all for gathering for MPD 150 and for abolition. For me, abolition is really about two things. It's about one, getting social goods to our people and like imagining new ways of getting social goods to our people. You know, Dr. Rose Brewer mentioned healthcare. You know, we often do work around housing, around conflict resolution and education and food and water. And for me, the second part of abolition is kind of a philosophical. It's like really being clear on what are those key features of a system that make it unreformable? What are the key things that make it oppressive? You know, I think back to like a lot of the systems that our ancestors have formally abolished, like chattel slavery, and like there are systems like that that are, you know, conceptually impossible to imagine in a better way. You know, there's no way to own people in a way that is life affirming. And so for me, I see the work of abolition as looking at systems today and identifying like what are the key features of oppressive systems today, and making sure that we continue the work of our ancestors and putting it into. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to hear more from Taiwana in a sec. All right, lastly, we have Jason Soul. Jason is a formerly incarcerated abolitionist. He has been a criminal justice educator for 13 years and is currently an adjunct professor at Hamline University in the Criminal Justice and Forensic Science Department. He has facilitated hundreds of circles in jails, prisons, and communities across the nation. Jason is also the co-founder of Humanize My Hoodie movement, in which he challenges the threats and perceptions of Black people through clothing, art, exhibitions, documentary screenings, and workshops. He's a core member of a Relationships Evolving Possibilities, right? Where several abolitionists respond to community harms in the Twin Cities. In addition, he recently launched the Institute of Aspiring Abolitionists for people who like to learn more about abolitionist frameworks. Jason, welcome, welcome. And in your own words, abolition is?
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate Taiwana, Rose, Ricardo, Molly, all y'all, you know, everyone on here. And that's what I think abolition is. It's those relationships and saying, okay, how do we sit down? How do we talk? How do we figure this out, man? Like, I still want to be in community. What does it really look like? So like Taiwana said, like Rose said, so eloquently, absolutely, I love y'all back. It's about really figuring it out. As a kid, we had to figure it out. Like, man, we didn't have no solutions, man. It was like, wasn't nobody there. Ain't no phone calls to make. We had to figure it out. So I think from that spirit, you know, we were birthed as abolitionists. We were radical as kids. Like in my neighborhood, by the time I was 7, I had already been stitched up and all kind of stuff. So I think, you know, we had to keep figuring it out because we loved each other, but we just didn't know how to hold each other accountable. So the emotions were a lot. That carried out to so many different forms of life. So as abolitionists, like, it's like we can't tell the correction officers, we can't tell the principal at school, we can't tell, ain't nobody to tell. Like, so for us, it was like we got to be the ones that support each other, and everybody needed different things. When I was younger, I felt like, hey, you know, if I got any issue, I'll go, you know, talk to 5 of them, 10 of them, you know, it's gonna be whatever it's gonna be. But some of my friends would feel like, no, I need 3 people with me when I go confront them. Some people might say, I need 10 people with me when I go confront them. Some people might say, I need everybody. I need 30 people to support me in this situation. So it's like we was figuring it out. And at a young age, when harm happened, we had circles. I mean, 500 people. Some of y'all know the story. Like, I grew up in Chicago. When we met, you got to think, we was trying to figure out, how do you bail somebody out? How do you hold them accountable? They harmed that girl, man. Like, they not just about to walk around here like that when we know what they did. Hey, they beat them up the other day. It's like we had to figure it out. So, you know, like, I'm grateful, you know, that MPD 150 allowed me to, you know, be a part of this, because I knew what they were doing to us, and it was nobody listening. It was nobody listening. So when MPD 150 said, hey, we want to know about your years of interacting with them, and I'm like, hell yeah, I need this, because you know, we had just lost Philando. We had been through a lot. I don't even want to go through all of that, but it was a breath of fresh air. And that's what abolition is. We dreaming it up and we doing it. People think we just out here just, what is that? Nah. Every day we holding each other accountable. We loving each other. We supporting everybody. And we doing the things that people taught to us. It's like Rose Brewer taught me things when I was fresh out of prison. Dr. Sam Grant taught me things when I was fresh. Ricardo, everybody was investing in me. So I always wanted to make them proud. Abolition works like that, where it's like you so deep in relationship, where it's like you don't want to let nobody down, and you want to be on point, and you want to try and hold all the relationships in a beautiful way. So shout out to y'all for bringing us together tonight, but for doing the work for the 5 years, man. Y'all inspire so much. I mean, so many different, you know, orgs. Like I say, rep, we definitely was all inspired, because I couldn't go nowhere without different people from MPD 150 hitting me up. I'm like, dang, is this a setup every meeting? I'm like, hey, man, well, hold on, man. Y'all was everywhere, man, and we loved it. So glad to be on here with y'all. Honored to be here. Much love.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I so appreciate that, because I feel like there's just so many concentric circles where I'm like, I joined rap when I was like, oh, Jason's a part of rap. Like having conversations when back in the day I was doing Minnesota Freedom Fund before the money. And I'm like, okay, like we all just like swimming in the same waters. So it's all love. I'd love to get everyone, Taiwana, Rose, can you guys come back and we all see your lovely faces?
Okay.
Hey, I come off mute. It's like family reunion style. We all gonna be just like, you know, in conversation. And it's honestly beautiful part about, I think, my moderation style is like, I'm not gonna pass it to any one person. I just like what's gonna flow organically and see like who's gonna take the bait, you know, a little bit. But I like how this conversation about how y'all are kind of naming what abolition is in your own words, because what I heard is that there's a lot of love and care in these definitions, right? And I'm gonna use this quote to tee up this question. So Arundhati Roy blesses us with this gem, right? She says, another world is not only possible, she's on her way. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. And you all have given us, you know, your own interpretations and realities around abolition. What do you think needs to happen to bridge where we are in this current moment to the definitions that you've provided us with. So how do we get to where we are, to where you see us in those beautiful things that you provided us with?
Well, you know, we could spend many, many hours talking about this moment and what it's going to take. I know you're trying to get at those gems, but you know, I've spent many years trying to come to grips with what it's going to take. And I do know that we're in a righteous moment as your generation and another generation stands in the ready to oppose everything this US empire has propagated. Racism, white supremacy, imperialism, destruction of Mother Nature, and the list goes on, heteropatriarchy, extractivism. But our eyes must be wide open in terms of what it's going to take. And we have some hardcore lessons we've learned by living in the Twin Cities since the murder of George Floyd. And before that, back to Jason's point, we always knew that the veneer of liberalism was a veneer, that what it would take to really make those values manifest would take more than a few words. And that means, from my perspective and my many years of doing this, really trying to build that world. You mentioned in my bio that I'd been involved in the World Social Forum and the US Social Forum, and that Roy quote comes from that. The idea that another world was possible was generated in the early part of the 21st century in Brazil. And I don't think it's any less true than it was then. But we need to be really tactically nimble and strategically visionary, which is a whole nother set of conversations that I hope we will continue. We know that, you know, state violence is built into this system, both, you know, the state as well as nationally. And we know from its inception, and I don't want to take too long, but I will say that our challenge continues to be the very one that brought all of us to abolition. And that is, and I'll just quote from something I've said before, when elite self-interest and social interest are so aligned with racialized economic dispossession, this is intractable ground, requiring political opposition. When institutional practices are so resistant to change, state violence and political killings are expressions of this reality, the very warp and sinew of the everyday world, then we have no choice but to resist. It is our radical imperative to do so. And indeed, the struggle for abolition is at the center of our vision. And I'll shut up there because, you know, this is what I do every day. Do a lot of.
I appreciate you so much.
But I'd love to hear from Taiwana and from Jason.
For sure, for sure. Thank you, Dr. Rose Brewer. I mean, I'm cool with letting you go off first. However long as you want, right? Oh man, the things that came to mind for me as Dr. Rose Brewer was talking, I don't know, for me, I feel like we need more leadership. We need new leadership. We need Black and brown youth and young adults to be in our leadership positions right now. I feel like a lot of our current decision makers, and like it shows up in their policies and in their practices and in their cultures, like they don't really have the imagination to see things differently. And they really buy into like respectability politics and you know, punishment and surveillance and like just ideas that aren't really, that don't feel like care and don't feel like Black and brown to me. And so I don't know. I think we need more young people in decision-making roles, like right now, like not in a million cajillion years, because people like to be vague. We're like talking about young people, like one day this, one day that. And I'm like, no, I think now. Um, and I think there's also something about, community autonomy that really stands out to me. Like, I remember during the Chauvin trial, doing some marshaling work with a local organization, Justice Frontline Aid. Um, and like we would take our cars and we would take garbage cans and we would block off streets. Be like, hey, like this is the people's space right now. People are protesting, like chill out. You're not about to be driving through here. And I'm like, what if we did that, bro? Like, what if we just started, you feel me? I'm from St. Paul, the Wright Street neighborhood. Like, what if we just cut off, Maryland and Dale, went down to Maryland and Rice, and we just blocked our cars, we blocked off those intersections, and we like, yo, all this is autonomous land now. Sorry. What if we started relying on our community gardens and trade and relationships and like, just really started living in the ways that our communities want and need to live, like without waiting for, the policy or the current decision makers to acknowledge it. I think spaces like George Floyd Square are like super radical because that's kind of what they did. Like, yeah, nah, this is autonomous land. Yeah, and so I think to kind of sum up, I think youth leadership like right now is what we need, and also, being strategic about it, like not just going and starting doing stuff strategically and organizingly going and like making our communities autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then
Thank you.
I'll leave it to big bro, Jason.
I agree with what both of y'all said. It is like, I never looked at young leaders as they gonna be in the future. Like Rose didn't look at me like that. Rose believed in me. I was 5? I was 25 at the time. So it was like, she believed in me right then. It wasn't a far projection or any of that. So I feel you on that, Tawana. I think, definitely having more support, like it's different points in time I can like really like go back to where it was like people stood up for me in a way where they didn't know if I was going to, rise or if I was going to end up in prison for a long time, and they still stood next to me. So the love that I received in critical moments of my life when I was down and it's like back against the wall type stuff, I give that to everybody. I try to get that to everybody I interact with. Like when Tawana reached out about their project, I'm like, absolutely, let's make some time. Octavia, like that's what I do, because it's like that's what was given to me. When I started in college and became the president of the Black Student Union, it was like I could take my leadership from that street model that Tawana brought up, because y'all know my past. I was holding down some blocks out here, like for real, like, and people know that. Like you come down certain streets, it's like, nah, we don't move like that down. And that was my thing for a while. So being able to have a safe organizing space. I even remember us roll somewhere on Lake Street, on the second floor somewhere in circles talking about, liberation and talking about what we see for Black folks. I remember being invited to circles like that. And I was like, damn, man, this called community organizing. Cause I just didn't know, that we can like do it in that manner, because it was always around you and the gang. And I still was on the gang file when I was organizing as, so it was a weird dynamic, but people allowed me to experiment. Like people allowed me to try things. Like when I became president of the Minneapolis NAACP, I'm like, what the? I'm like, look, see my damn phone fell off. I was like, what am I doing? But it felt important. It felt like I got elected. So people wanted me to serve like that. And I'm like, what am I doing? I don't got the capacity. And that's the thing. Like if I believe in abolition, I got to keep trying a lot of different things. Like, y'all know me, man. I'm pretty much a free agent. But I mean, I'm a part and parcel of a lot of things, though. You know what I mean? Like, I really try to show up and bring my best. Absolutely. I try and bring my best to everything. So, as abolitionists, people had to believe that a 3-time convicted felon could do something different. They had to believe in that. They had to like be able to say, no, I know him. Like, I know him. I feel his heart is good. I think he gonna, if people didn't do that, I don't know where I would be. I probably, wouldn't have made it, So that's why I believe in abolition, because it's like now we teaching each other how to call one another or how to look out and how to be safe and, how to like really have each other back. If we do that more, instead of like hating on each other and, all of that stuff, I'm like, I don't have time to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I want people to grow and build and enjoy this life. We got to understand life is really short. If we don't hold each other down and love each other, it's even shorter. So it's like, man, it's a blessing that we can even share space and look at each other and just like share love and camaraderie. Cause, there was moments where, we didn't know if we was going to make it out of that. That George Floyd time was I know we moved on. We move on and we try, but it's like, man, that was a lot. If we wouldn't have had MPD 150, we wouldn't have had as many concentrated conversations on abolition. I don't think, you know what I mean? Like, MPD 150 gave us a lot of tools, a lot of ancestral knowledge, a lot of spaces to be able to vent and share our stories. When people don't have that, now they more likely to be in some stuff that ain't even for them. So I'm grateful for the people who believe that I could do something else and believe that I deserve to, have a better future. Because when I look around now, I mean, I'm just shocked. I never seen so many formerly incarcerated folks in leadership. When I look, let me be clear. When I came home, you wasn't seeing that. You wasn't seeing it to that. To when I look around, I see Kevin Reed and I see other, I'm like, oh man. So that's why I believe it's real. Not only have I seen my life change, I've seen other people's lives change right in front of me. So that's what I have more faith in than any of these institutions. We can love and protect each other. We just got to be able to talk. Harm happens, how we addressing it, how we supporting folks. What does it really look like to love each other to the next phases in life? I'm 44 now. It's like 24 to 34 looked a certain way. 34 to 44. When I think about 44 to 54, it's like I got to move different and be flexible and have a lot of elasticity in abolition work. And that's what I'm excited for. So we got to know our phases in this work and we'll be able to last the duration of the marathon.
I hear that. I also feel like the context of Minnesota, Twin Cities specifically, feels so different. And part of the quote that I love so much is like, on a quiet day, I could hear her breathing. I feel like in the Twin Cities, sometimes she's coughing. She's damn near like, like, you gonna hear me today, right? And for me, I think the question is like, what I heard, and particularly in Taiwana and Jason's response is like, and then the response that Jason gave when he was talking about like defining abolition in his own words is like, we've been practicing abolition in so many ways for so many years. And so I would just like love to hear from y'all, like, especially I think during the uprising, early stages, especially around mutual aid and stuff like that, like just how have y'all seen, what are the ways that y'all have seen abolition modeled here in the Twin Cities, here in Minnesota and beyond? I don't think it's bound by boundaries.
Yes, I kind of want to piggyback off Jason a little bit. Like when Jason was talking about how important MPD 150's framework has been for abolition, like, I don't even know. I don't even think y'all give yourselves enough credit. Like, I feel like if y'all didn't come together and drop the Enough is Enough report in 2017, I'm not sure our community would have had the language and the framework to say abolition as loud as we did in 2020 when George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police. And so like, you know, we know Minneapolis was a nexus of the whole country resisting, right? And the whole world resisting. And so, you know, like if y'all don't do that in 2017, I do think 2020 looks a lot different. You know, and that might be a strong statement, but like I'm gonna stand on that statement. So yeah, just want to say I honor y'all and appreciate y'all. And I know I know a lot of the core members, and y'all is way too humble to not to say that. So I'm gonna say it for you. Yes, some ways I feel abolition being practiced. I love how it feels like we're in a space where more Black trans folks can get money and get resources right now. Like I see a lot of kind of, you know, kind of low key like underground fundraising and like, hey, I got a comrade who need $500 for her rent, boo boo, Cash App, Venmo, boo boo. And like, I don't know, just the ease with which we're giving money and resources to each other right now. I'm like, yes, that is abolition. Yes, and I'm gonna step back because there are two other wise voices that I want to hear from.
Well, I guess to build on both you and Jason's point about MPD 150, just to remind us that there is a long, long through line for abolition in our history and culture, going back to, I guess, the slave ships. You know, I think that's real. I do think the narrative has shifted, and a lot of that narrative shift, you know, we might have lived abolition, but you know, sometimes you need a frame. As someone has said, you know, if you can't have a lens to see something, you may be living it, but you need that language and that frame. And I think that's what MPD brought to the table that was so very significant, because, you know, a lot of the young warriors and fighters had been in the space definitely since, you know, the killing of Jamar Clark, and even earlier. You know, I've been here for quite a while, and we were fighting police violence, you know, 25 years ago. Let me just shout out Mel Reeves, who transitioned, did so much of that baseline work in these cities, and shouldn't forget that legacy. But you know, there's a certain kind of creativity and genius that informs my hope and the work that, you know, we on a 24/7 news cycle. It's probably good that it's going on without that that light shining on it, because it'll be distorted. But you know, I'm a living witness to below the surface, and the work is still proceeding. And you know, to me, that's kind of the dialectic of change. As someone said earlier, I don't remember if it was Jason or you, Tawana, that you know, the change is going to happen as long as the boot is on the neck. There's no doubt about that. And back to your generation, I always draw up on Fanon when he says each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And I do have the utmost confidence that your generation is going to do that, is going to fulfill it. And, you know, it's an intractable struggle. It's a long haul. But that's the way the work is happening, even if it's not visible on the surface, and likely should not be, frankly speaking, given this society.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Jason, do you have anything to add before we go to this next question?
Yeah, I'll just say, for me, when we really investing in each other, and it's like, it's like, y'all know I'm gonna go eat at Soul Bowl. It's like I'm gonna try not to go to Chipotle. I'm gonna like circulate people, and I try to be the best supporter. So I think when we talking about abolition, like Mariam Kaba says, she says, as an abolitionist, I care about two things. I care about my relationships and how we reduce harm. So it's like whenever somebody, hit me up or I'm in community or in spaces, I just always say, dang, I know if I was you, I'd probably do this. I just give examples of like what I think I would do. Anytime y'all ever call me, it's like I will dream with you and just say like, if I was in that, I know I'll probably do this. And I think that will be, a smooth result. And conflict is a part, you got to think conflict is a part of us being human beings. We gon' disagree. Sometimes we're not going to be feeling each other. Like that happens. Seasons change. But at the same time, it's like you could still be like that in a loving way. It's like you don't have to get nasty or get like, so I think being an abolitionist requires us to walk like in a way that says, I'm willing to be held accountable if I'm wrong. Like you could sit me down, you can call me in, you can say, hey man, I don't like how that went down, and people do that. So I think that's the part of abolition where people got to take it from the mind and theorizing and dreaming, which is beautiful, to real life practice. I think rep is one of those practices. It's like we made a 10-year commitment to like really try some things and figure out what is radical consent. What is, the ancestral knowledge that we need to hold while we do this? Like what is, so we always thinking and trying new things. So I've seen a lot of projects spur, not MH First out in Oakland. They do amazing work showing up for community members, like being there, in real time. They got an RV and everything. They pop up. When they pop up, they really pop up. So it's like, they got a whole kit, all kind of stuff in there. So that's what gives me hope, that we're gonna be able to like really, because like you say, the networks are of safety are deepening, they strengthening, and it's like we, assessing things in a deeper way. I think the same energy that people put into like politics and stuff and lifting up people, like, like lifting up one person as the leader and stuff, like that harms us in a lot of ways. How can we shift the energy to where abolitionists are just like in deep community in a way where, yeah, we'll do that politics as a harm reduction strategy, but this the real stuff we need to be focused on, like on the daily. Let's keep working, grinding, man. Like, yeah, we got to knock on doors and get people in there to reduce harm. But beyond that, we got to be loving each other and like really supporting people's dreams, man. Like I said, life is short. You can't let a day go. I got homeboys who they didn't make it out of prison. They died while incarcerated. So it's like, that's why I believe we got to have a cage-free world. Free Phillip Vance, free Marlo Gomez, free Maureen Ayan Lobi, like free a lot of them. We can do this. Where I grew up, people who committed harm, they got held accountable. You couldn't just go on about your business without, talking about what had happened in a real deep, sacred way. So yeah, we just got to do more of that. Let's learn from the blueprints of the ancestors and the elders.
I think like part of what to summarize myself or to add myself into the conversation, I think, but like part of what I'm hearing too is that there's like a necessary requirement to remember backwards in order for us to move forward, right? Like, and that's like some Sankofa principles, right? When we think about it. But the necessity to love people to the next step, right? Like, how are we looking at ourselves in the space of what we need for each other, but what do we need in order for us to be better together? So that part just feels real, like chef's kiss, like how do we, like that is practicing abolition. And a part of that feels like kind of like the necessity of like space, because like abolition starts at home a little bit. It's like, oh, if you can't, make a plate or for yourself, then how are you making plates for other people, right? Like this like notion and how you pay it forward. So how do we maximize that concept on like a universalist kind of space? All right, this next quote is from a dear one. Miriam Kaba says, "Hope is a discipline," right? And she really, I think like that came from the space where she was talking about how do we be in the world and of the world at the same time, which is such a hard part. I think it really piggybacks off of this process of like, yo, stuff is heavy. And abolition is not a new concept. There have been people who've been fighting for liberation for millennia. What keeps y'all grounded, right? And especially committed and hopeful with this is a long-term struggle, right? Like liberation could come tomorrow. Like I'm not gonna jinx it. And it also could come in 150 years. So how do we individually stay committed? What keeps you grounded? What does joy look like? And also, how do you keep communities grounded? Like, what does that process look like? Anyone can take it.
For me, I feel like, I remember being a kid and like being in movement spaces and being in classrooms, and I'm like, man, like I want to eradicate oppression. Like that's my life goal. I'm gonna do it in my lifetime. It doesn't need to take time. Me and my generation are gonna do this. And I think I still have a lot of that energy, but like after doing some of the work I've done, like I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm burnt out. And so I don't know how I keep hope is I try to like recognize myself as part of a tradition and part of myself, or see myself as a movement or as part of a movement. I mean, and like what I mean is that like we don't have to do all the work in our lifetime because our ancestors did so much of the work to get us here, and our descendants will do so much work to push it forward. And so just really like, I don't know, I try to, for me, I'm excited to be an elder. I'm excited to be old and have all the game and have young people like see me in the street and be like, oh, it's Miss Taiwana. Hi, Miss Taiwana. And like kind of just being a chill, like, hey, I did the work and I could like chill stage. And like, I don't know, I try to prepare myself to be a good elder, be a good mentor. And like, I've been slowing down in a lot of my organizing work and really focusing on just writing and mentoring young writers. Because I'm like, thinking about Ella Baker, her whole thing was strong people don't need strong leaders, and like there's a role for everyone in the movement. And like it's okay if you have one like specific thing that you do that's not even necessarily on the front lines or super visible. And so I've been content with like like I think I'm just a writer and I think I'm just a teacher mentor thing, and that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Taiwana.
When Miriam Kaba says hope is a discipline, it's like I live by that. I'm hopeful every day. Like no matter what trenches I'm in, like some of y'all know I had to bury my father earlier this year. I don't share too much publicly because it's just like sore for a lot of my siblings and even my mom, who married him and had 3 children with him. But he died of a heroin overdose. He was a heroin addict my entire life. And it's like I knew how he struggled with, that battle. And I was always trying to be, empathetic, but hurt, upset and all of that. So going through stuff like that, I still got to be hopeful. You know what I mean? I had to bury him next to his mother and father who came from, Alabama, with a vision, moved to Chicago on a mission. And, burying him is like a process I was sharing with people around me, just saying, it's not a grieving process for me because we had already had to like mourn what we hoped for because, that addiction was pretty serious. You know, in the last 10 years, maybe 4 overdoses in the hot. So I already had to like separate from the vision of being at a Timberwolves game or a Bulls game. I had to let it go. I had to mourn it while he was alive. So I think like being vulnerable enough to share like the things that help us get through is really important. So when she says hope is a discipline, it's like, that's what I try to be every day, no matter who I'm interacting with, whether it's my students. You usually get the same, Jason, I give you the same energy. So I live by that every day. You got to be disciplined, like to be able to know, like, as long as you got breath in your body, you can change some shit. Like as long as you breathe and you got the opportunity to impact something or move something or open it up. Like, I think we got to be better, like cheerleaders for each other. Give people flowers, man. Like for real, like that's why I always try and lift people up, man. I try and give everybody their flowers. I'm gonna say this. 2005, rough year for me, but Tawana brought up Ella Baker. I received Ella Baker training in 2005. Went to Tennessee with Freedom School. Ayolanda, Adrian Mack, Emmanuel Donaby. I go down the list. We was deep out there. 1,000 Black folks, man. We competed. We gave chance. It was beautiful. And Ella Baker believed in collective leadership. And that's always the way I wanted to show up in this stuff, to say like, man, I want to be the best supporter of this person as I can. Let me give them my best. I always got stuff I'm cooking up, but when we do that more, I think the pendulum will swing a little bit more, because people in their minds about abolition. When we say hope is a discipline, it's like no matter what I'm going through, even when I was in a cage, I was dreaming. I used to tell people, I had a lot of dreams when I was in prison. I said, man, when I get out, I'm going to get a condo off one of these lakes. Man, y'all going to come over. I was dreaming in prison, like for real. And, you know, when I came home, it's like if people didn't lay a place for me and say, like, come on, man, like who gets to meet Angela Davis? Like, Rose, I don't know who pulled that or made that happen, but who gets to meet Angela Davis a year after coming home from prison? Like, what the heck? Like, so people made a way. And I'm going to say this and I'm going to pass it. Mahmoud El Khati, I know he's not going to talk about this, but it's important for me to say. In 2005, when I got set up by a friend and I was facing 110 months in prison, Mahmoud El Khati, as busy as he was and as important as he was doing the communiversities and cooking up different projects and different models, he took the time to write a letter of support for me so that I didn't get thrown in a cage. That's what gives me hope. The fact that he was busy as like, you know, Mock, man, like my elder Mock. For him to do that, and he came while I was volunteering to give it to me. I was volunteering at the Hub Center on University. You know, really, you know, trying to help and give back and all of that to folks who's trying to get their GEDs and trying to, you know, I even taught English as a second language, you know, like just to help, you know. So Mahmoud brought that letter over there to me. It's moments like that that made me even more hopeful, because it wasn't just me dreaming it up, other people. Like Mahmoud, I was a freshman at Metro State. Mahmoud started calling me Dr. Soul. I'm like, man, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it a year and a half. Like, I don't know what he talking about doctors, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna survive. But thanks to the people around me, I was able to make it through that and keep being able to show up with love, man. Like, really, I've been working at having peace for a long time. It's like when we share our process of how we become peaceful in this work, we be more hopeful. It gives us more hope. Seeing y'all kill, like Tawana, I met her with, I think I told you this, Lupita a few weeks ago. It's like so amazing to see somebody I knew years ago and now they getting there. I see them hitting a stride. That's the beauty I share. If we can be better supporters and lovers of each other, like, I just want to see you just be as amazing as you can be. When we can have more of that and less all in our head, how we do this algorithm. If I do this, no, don't miss out on what's right in front of you chasing. Don't do that. Abolition is about that, being present. Like Ruth Wilson Gilmore said, My babies hold me accountable. My wife hold me accountable. My mama still hold me accountable. I got 4 aunties still living. They all would call me if I said something out of pocket or whatever. So let's tell people how we like to be held accountable.
Dr. Rose?
Yeah, I'm pretty hardcore. I read that discipline literally. That you know, our people have always been strategic, and I'm always reminding of Frederick Douglass. What is your 4th of July to me? So a piece of it is the love piece. Another of it is understanding what we're up against. And you know, the thing that keeps me going is really a recognition by Lenin. And I pretty much say this every day. You know, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And that's a very profound recognition of how social change happens. I know that the system is not going to transform itself. Our major obligation, as Jason has said so eloquently, is to one another, but there is work to be done. And what we are trying to build, and I know Gilmore understands this very well, it's not going to come out of the current system that we're in. You're not going to get abolition in the context of racial capitalism. There's no if, buts, and ands about it. So what we're trying to build, I believe, and I've seen, you know, Roy's vision, it's there. But we need a tough, robust movement that contends with a lot of complexities. And I think at the center of it are all of those courageous folk who have brought us to this point, young and old, and who want another world. I remember a lot of people think about Dr. King, but don't remember Ralph Abernathy, what he called freedom-loving people. I always will remember that phrase that he articulated, bringing together freedom-loving people everywhere to create the kind of world we want. And it's not just in a US context, it's a global context, freedom-loving people who are in solidarity with one another to create the kind of world that we want for the people and the planet. And that gives me hope, and that gives me the determination to continue. And it really moves the hard revolutionary road that we're going to have to be on for a very long time, pass it on, as Tawana said, if necessary. But it's real. I mean, that's the discipline.
Yes, that piece feels like the discipline of knowing that like burnout can't really exist. It's breaks, right? Like that we can't condition people to leave movements because they become disillusioned with themselves. And so how do we create longer lasting, like people being longer lasting in spaces? And we have to tell people that like revolutions can be mighty and they can be small at the same time.
And that constancy of collectivity and connectivity is really the key. You know, this is not a solo journey, that's for sure. And
just echoing what Taiwana was saying and pinging off of what
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Beautiful. All right, this is gonna be. We have maybe one more question, and then I see there's one Q&A. So this one question could possibly be split into two. And this question, I love this question. It's just more of a process for people to see I'll dream out loud. So like I've started at all of my questions, it begins with a quote. There's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns. Octavia E. Butler quote. And then this question puts this quote or question is more of like a play on two quotes. So if there are new suns, we believe that that's true. I do. And a new world is among us. What do you see in this new ecosystem? Like, this is an invitation for us to practice radical imagination on joy and abundance. So what do you want to exist in this new world where there are new suns? Do you want there to be a reality where there are just like, we don't have homes anymore. People live in like a big house, or we don't have like currency, or etc. Like people just live in, etc. I don't know. I want us to dream together and dream out loud, like, and invite people in the chat too to just like type what you want to see in these new worlds. Yeah.
Well, definitely, I want to sustain Mother Earth for other worlds to be possible. And, you know, that's a hardcore reality that we're contending with at the moment. So a world where the people on the planet are sustainable and sustained. And definitely the love piece that has run through this entire conversation is at the heart of all of it. But I'm pretty practical in terms of if we can build the kind of society where people are sustained and cared for, and our children are fully developed and can realize their dreams, those are the worlds that I want to be a part of and to help bring into existence.
Beautiful.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking about for me, like collective stewardship of resources. So like you know, like it wouldn't matter if somebody came into my crib and stole this, and that, because this, and that wasn't even mine. It was, I got that from the library. It was the community owned, you know, whatever. And I could just go and get another CD like that. Like you just stole some free stuff. Like, do you? You know, and you know, so like really moving beyond, I guess, ideas about like ownership and like this is ours and not someone else's. Like, you know, I don't know, like what does sharing look like on a community level? I mean, what does abundance look like with our resources? When you said, what if folks wouldn't have houses no more? We all just live in one big house. Oh, I'm like, yo, like that probably is what it looks like, huh?
Yes. I just like the whole, like, somebody wrote people's library, people's closet. I'm like, ooh, that sounds nice. Like, yeah, I think the concept of like, what is actually stealing if you don't own anything? So like, that's just like a question that gets put back out. Like, what is stealing then if there's no ownership? So that's just a dope thing that I'm gonna ponder about. Like, I gotta think about that. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I'm gonna expound on that. It's meeting everybody's needs. Like we can actively shrink these police departments because a lot of people just like, oh my God, no police all right now. Actively have a role in shrinking all of these police departments. Actively. What's your strategy around shrinking all of these police departments? If it's 100 by next year, 200 the following year, have some kind of strategy around shrinking that. Shrink the cages. We got about 8 adult facilities out here. Can we have 7 in 3 years? Can we have 6 in like shrink all of that? While like Rose said, and like Tawana said, being able to serve and build up our ecosystems. Like I said, I know where I'm gonna eat. I know people gonna support me with the hoodies. I know I could be able to like be over at Voices and serve on that board. And you know, truth be told, man, like I never, even though I've been a dreamer, I never dreamed that I would be a part of a table. And that happened, in 2020 to 2021, where I was a part of a table where community members figured out a plan to give $6 million to Black folks. And I was sitting at a table with other Black folks. That shit was wild to me. You know what I mean? So the dreaming that we doing is actually happening. We got to acknowledge it when it comes to fruition, because it's like, wow, I was able to be a part of a process that helped other Black. I had never seen like anything like that. So we dreaming and we doing that shit. Like Rep, I'm just grateful for the other core members, Raffo, Hosina Manu, Rox Anderson, Signe Haraday, and the whole squad. Y'all know Paige, Prescott. I like, man, you know, the whole squad. I'm like, how do we find each other, fam? Like, what the? So I'm constantly blown away. So we dream it, then we actually, you know, get a chance to experience it. So, you know, the actualization ain't too far from the dream in our world. Once we dream it, it's like, well, how we giving this legs without going past our capacity and doing that? So it's like that radical consent piece is really important. Like, let's be intentional. Like, when y'all called me to be a part of this, it was an honor. I knew I was going to make time. I knew I was going to be able to. How do we preserve that in everything we do? Well, we feel that on a daily basis, that joy and that love when we're around each other. Like, man, come on, man. I want that every day. I don't want no static. You know what I'm saying? I don't want no beef. And I don't want to see all the, you know, traumas of the world. I want to be able to love people. Like, we only really here to do that. Like when you think about the essence of why we even sharing space and being able to see each other and look into each other's eyes, which, you know, they say is the pathway to the soul. For us to be able to do this and have all of these experiences, what is it for? It's because that's what we're supposed to be doing daily. You know, I be kissing my babies. They don't even be wanting me to do that no more. You know what I'm saying? But that's how it's going to be, because I know I'm only here to like really love them and love the people I interact with.
Beautiful. All right, we got 2 questions. I'm not good at just switching over, so I'm just gonna go to the questions from the Q&A. One of the questions from the Q&A is that, what do we mean by leadership? There's a question, it's been rephrased. What do we mean by leadership when so many of our institutions are built on the backs of enslaved people? Is it possible to take a seat at the table and dismantle it? Are there other ways of thinking about leadership? And anybody want to take a stab at that?
Well, who evoked Miss Ella Baker? I think that was Taiwana. Was it Taiwana? Had a real deep understanding of what real leadership is. Taiwana, you want to speak to that?
Me and you in the same way. Like, I was gonna say Ella Baker too. Yes. So Ella Baker. So I think Ella Baker's framework for leadership is what we should be uplifting. Yeah, like she believed in group-based leadership, and like in spaces she was in, some people get frustrated with her sometimes because she's like, hey, no, this is participatory democracy. Like, this is like you opt in, choose to be here. And like, we not leaving until we reach consensus, or like we not gonna do the thing if we don't reach consensus. And so like consensus building and emphasis on groups and collectives, I think that approach to leadership feels liberatory to me. You know, unless like, you know, I don't want to say there's never a space for executive decisions or like one person making decisions, but definitely less of that. Yeah.
Okay. This other question is, do you think there's a greater role for connection between communities? I think we know that the answer is yes, but the people want to kind of hear y'all's response. AIM was founded here largely in response to police violence, Indigenous and Latinx groups. Oh, I haven't finished reading the question. Hold on 1 second. Indigenous and Latinx groups and Asian communities are also disproportionately harmed. Is there more work to do on working together and being inclusive in our own spaces?
Yes, and yes, and yes. You know, that's the straightforward answer. But obviously it's more complicated than that. That's a whole nother conversation about how divide and conquer happens, not in the interest.
I just want to thoroughly thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Rose. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Taiwana, for being here on this panel. I am not going to ask that question to Rose. If you have a question, you can email her on that one. We're going to wrap up, but I wanted to see if you had any last parting words to the folks in the audience around abolition, around any of the work that you want to do, that you're doing, that you want to uplift, before I pass it over to Molly and Lindsay.
Yeah, the struggle continues. I mean, I know that sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but you know, when the revolutionaries in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde say "A luta continua," I mean, I think that should be our calling card, frankly speaking, until we win. Yeah, until that vision that you so beautifully articulated, is manifest.
Like y'all said, man, and like Miriam Kaba said, we do this till we free us. I'm grateful. First time in my life, I got a passport. Y'all know the system was trying to keep me in this state and keep me in this country, but I finally got a passport, y'all. So I think like we got to celebrate the wins we have, man. Like really see the world, man. Like I haven't had a chance to do it, but really see other places and how they work stuff out, how they figure it out. You got to think, even when it was, chattel slavery, they figured out how to hold each other down and let people get enough room to run and figure out how to build the relationships. Like, let's tighten up from what was given to us and what we want to lay forward. It's like that Sankofa spirit. You got to be able to look back to be able to inform the present so that you can shift, the future. So absolutely, man, I'm with y'all, man. Solidarity, but mad love for MPD 150, man. Y'all planted a lot of seeds out here, and I hope y'all could see how they have grown. Like, for real, I hope y'all can see it, man. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, Ricardo, man, like, even, like, talking to me during the times of y'all doing that. And so, mad love to you, Ricardo, man. I know you a super humble servant, and I know you don't like this kind of shit, but at the same time, I want to give you some flowers, man. Like, you a gem, man. You a gem, for real. But mad love to the whole MPD 150. And mad love and respect. Let me say that, too.
But that part, the thing at the top of my brain right now is practicing to become a good ancestor. Doing things today to get you to Dr. Rose Brewer level, to get you to Ricardo level. And like, just really thinking about what gems are we leaving behind and how are we watering the next generation to come in.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Just again, thank you all. The words that I'll leave you with is that, again, there are just so many quotes that I've just dropped. Practice them all. They all are beautiful. And practice being in spirit with yourself and then with each other. Drink some water.
And thank you for being an incredible moderator.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
thank you.
Oh, you already know, fam.
Oh, you know, Jason.
Come on. You the truth, fam. You the truth.
I appreciate y'all so much. Molly, I'm
Thanks,
passing it back.
O.
Lindsay, I'm passing it back.
Thanks, O, and thank you all, Dr. Rose, Taiwana, Jason. I'm sitting with your words and what you all lifted up. It's hitting home. It's on all of us, this deconstructing and creating in ourselves and the world every day, every minute. And on that note, as we move towards closing, we wanted to pose a question to all of you with us tonight. I know we're coming up on 8:30. We're going to take about 10 more minutes. If you want to join us, feel free. Otherwise, this will be recorded. So you heard the panelists share what abolition means to them, how they are practicing abolition now in this moment. And so via the chat box, we invite you to share with us your answer to the question. How are you practicing abolition in your life right now? How are you doing it? Wing T will put up a slide with this question and we'll play some music for a couple minutes while you think about this, but feel free to drop your answer in. We might pull out a few and share them. Also, panelists, if you feel one really stand out, feel free to voice it into the space, and then we'll come together and we'll close.
Hi, everyone. Feel free to keep adding your answers to this question. One other question we want to pose to you is, are there groups, events, projects, initiatives, or other abolitionist work or resources that you want to lift up? Please feel free to add that to the chat as well. We'll give just a few more moments here.
Seeing so many answers come through, undoing family patterns, building with neighbors, getting involved in specific groups. It's all these things. It's all the elements.
We will definitely be saving the chat box and returning to these and uplifting these as we close out our kind of make our final plans for our social media as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to keep adding your ideas, resources to the chat box. We have just a few more things to share with you all as we sunset and close out tonight's event. So first of all, while we have distributed over 15,000 copies of Enough is Enough, let me say that again. We've distributed over 15,000 copies of the Enough is Enough report, which is amazing. And there are actually still quite a few available. The digital version is amazing, but we'd love to get more of the physical copies into people's hands. So if you know of any schools, universities, conferences, organizations, etc., who might want to take a box or 2 or 20 boxes, please let us know. You can email us at info@mpd150.com. Second, a lot of you may already know about this, but MPD 150's last big project was the lupine project. A few folks noticed that lupines, the native ones, not the invasive ones, hold a bunch of qualities that align with abolitionist principles. It's a really beautiful story that you can read more about on our website, but the idea is that we'd love to see them planted all over Minneapolis as a kind of symbolic show of solidarity. You can find these seed packets for free. They're available at RLM Arts, Moon Palace Books, Bee Resale, and Ace's Bakery.
And finally, just thank you. A few dozen people were part of MPD 150 at different times over the years, moving in and out, contributing in many different ways on different work groups. Thanks to the artists and designers who created work for our exhibit, for the comic book and other materials. To the teachers who invited us into classrooms, musicians and poets who played fundraiser benefit shows for us, the various organizations and collectives who spun off new ideas, some that have been dropped in the chats. Thanks also to the elders, the activists, and other community members who shared guidance throughout this entire process. We sign off tonight towards the dreaming, the future imagining, the hoping that Miriam Kaba and in turn Jason lift up, not only for a police-free future, but for a fully liberated and abolitionist future where the institution of policing and its colonial, anti-Black and capitalist roots become a historical footnote. As O lifted up earlier, the words of Ruth Wilson Gilmore, abolition is about presence, not absence. It's about building life-affirming institutions. Ruth Wilson Gilmore also talks about abolition is deliberately everythingist. It's about the entirety of human environmental relations. And while talking about a policy in Spain, she says, where life is precious, life is precious. So here we move towards a world that honors that preciousness in what we allow, what we don't allow, in what we build, and in how we interact. We are here to exist in the duty to one another and not to a system. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this space, for this work, for the work that you will do in the tomorrows, to our interpreters, Benny and Tim from Pro Bono ASL, to our moderator, O, our panelists, Dr. Rose, Jason, Taiwana, and thank you all for attending, for being here, for that work that you do, and for continuing to both imagine and build a world without prisons or police. Good night.